Hi, I'm Professor Moylan. In this micro lecture on how to prepare to pivot your class for online instruction, I'm doing something different than I do in the other 38 micro lectures. In the other 38, it's facts, facts, facts. But in this micro lecture, I want to give you my opinion and my recommendation. So let me start with my opinion. We can look at our classroom environment as being somewhere along a continuum between traditional and virtual. That's on my y-axis. And we can look at the type of instruction as being somewhere along a continuum between asynchronous and synchronous. That's on my x-axis. Now, I suspect that where most of you want to be is up there, traditional classroom with synchronous instruction. But given the tremendous uncertainties for fall 2020, you will probably be somewhere in the middle. Some synchronous and some asynchronous, some traditional possibly, and some virtual, definitely. Now, I further suspect that you might think that there's a correlation between the quality of instruction and the method of instruction. And you probably think that the correlation is like that, where traditional synchronous instruction is better. But during fall 2020, when you're going to be doing some other, the quality of the instruction might decline. That's a false dichotomy. Let's go ahead and take those axis labels off. That's a false dichotomy. I've switched the labels around. Now I've got synchronous on the x-axis over to the left and traditional on the y-axis down at the bottom. You know what? There is some traditional synchronous class instruction that is poor quality, and of course we call that bad professor. And there is some asynchronous virtual instruction that is high quality, and we call that a great MOOC. So again, don't assume that there has to be this correlation between the method of instruction and the quality of instruction. In fact, we can make our classes better with the right mix of traditional and virtual and the right mix of synchronous and asynchronous. Where are you right now as it relates to getting ready for fall 2020? Now, some of you, and good for you, are all ready to go. That's fantastic. Others, I know certainly one colleague of mine, I give up. He literally said that to me. He said, Bill, I did not sign up for this. I'm not doing it. I give up. And that, of course, certainly is his right. Most people are somewhere in between, I think, but as we move from left to right, they are worried and very worried and freaking out. Well, calm down. But do remember that this is not a short-term bandage. This is a long-term operation. And here's exactly what I mean by that. And I want to look at college education, quality of instruction, and cost over the past 50 years. There's no doubt that things aren't a whole lot different now than they were in 1970, 50 years ago. If you went into a typical college classroom 50 years ago, it doesn't look all that different than going into a traditional college classroom at the beginning of the spring semester 2020. Of course, everybody knows the cost situation. The cost has just gone up and up and up and up and up. And so what's really happened is what used to be much more of a bargain, a great bargain, has become less of a bargain, and in fact, in many people's mind, overpriced. And that has led to this tipping point forced by the pandemic. There's no doubt about it, there has been a tipping point, and the post-secondary education industry has been disrupted, and in my opinion, disrupted forever, not unlike what has happened in some other industries. The auto industry, from the big three, disrupted by the Japanese imports and the German imports and the upstarts like Tesla. The airline industry disrupted. The telecommunications industry in the mid-1980s, disrupted by the breakup of Ma Bell, and other industries as well. Well, one thing that all of those industries have in common is that they heavily utilize technology as part of their disruption, and that is the case with post-secondary education industry. This industry needs to lean on technology. I firmly believe, my opinion, that the quality of college education is going to increase significantly in the next 10 years, and it's going to be because of the use of technology. And that's what we need to do. We need to embrace technology to improve the quality of education for our customers, the students and their parents. So here are my recommendations. First off, let's forget tech for now, because I really think that we really need to not worry about tech at first. The real work has less to do with technology than thinking about how to apply the technology and utilize the technology. So first, think about your class. Now, you know how you would conduct your course in a traditional classroom setting. But how are you going to do it in this non-traditional environment? There are some things that you would much rather do synchronously. And if you've got traditional classroom meetings in the fall, fantastic. Some of those, of course, may be synchronous meetings virtually via your video conferencing tool, WebEx or Zoom. Some things can be done asynchronously, and they can be done better, possibly, with your instructional media that you create, for example. So you need to figure out which, components can be handled which ways. So start with your syllabus and a yellow pad and start figuring that out. First, some nomenclature. We all know the traditional classroom and distance learning, which kind of evolved to online learning. Now, traditionally, when people talk about online learning, they've been talking about this asynchronous online learning model. But more and more, we're talking about remote learning, which has two components, the asynchronous component along with the synchronous component. Now, in the fall, that synchronous component for some could be actual traditional classroom, but for many, that might be a virtual classroom via video conference. Flipped classroom. Historically, the term has referred to a course that has asynchronous video instruction along with synchronous class meetings for discussion and questions. And those synchronous class meetings, again, could be actual, or virtual. High flex, simultaneous traditional classroom and virtual at the same time. Students choose to attend whichever way works better. Some students will be in the physical classroom with the instructor. Some will be following along in real time, but remotely. And some will view it later on, asynchronously. Lots and lots and lots of options, but it's all non-traditional. And we've got to prepare for that. And we've got to use our tools to prepare for that. And our big tools are our learning management system, our video conferencing platform, and our instructional media. It still boils down to you, your students, and your learning objectives. Although it's now being delivered differently. Many people have talked about online course design best practices, and it's a good idea to look at those. But remember, you are not teaching a MOOC. You're not teaching a MOOC, but it still does make sense to look at some of the ways that they do things and borrow from them. You are pivoting your course for remote instruction. So don't reinvent the wheel, but, put air in the tires, and that means look at what works in traditional online instruction. So let's go through their checklist, the instructor information. You want to share that information with your students. You want to make sure that they know exactly what is going on very, very explicitly. So you really need to make sure that your syllabus is well known. Of course, we are utilizing the technology. Because there are fewer face-to-face meetings, we need to make sure our communications are crystal clear. But we do want to focus on what our learning objectives are, the assignments that we're going to give our students, and the assessments that we're going to use to determine how they're doing. More than ever, it's important to engage our students with active learning. And we want to use our tools to do that. So back to your syllabus and the yellow pad, think of how you plan to traditionally present your class, but now you're not in the traditional classroom all the time. You're in the remote class, and so you've got to use your tools, your learning management system, your video conferencing tool, and your instructional media. With regard to the technology, in this program, the second section deals with learning management systems. If you've got Blackboard, there's a standalone section on Blackboard. There's a standalone section on Canvas. Sorry, Moodle people, can't support Moodle at this time. Section 3 deals with video conferencing, and again, you're going to go to whichever tool you've got, either the WebEx side of things or the Zoom side of things. But everyone can use Section 4 on instructional media. There are lots of choices with instructional media. You may want to use a couple of them. You may want to use a tool that allows you to show the screen live, but you also may want to use a tool that allows you to prepare all of your slides in advance and just present those. Also, don't only think of instructional video. Instructional audio can be a great tool for you as well. Got a lot to do as we pivot to online for fall 2020. Good luck with it.